Well. Back again with another video. Today we're going to be talking about the dungeon announcements for Dragonflight. So for those who don't know, a lot of stuff got announced about the Dragonflight expansion. You can check Wowhead. There's been a lot of different aspects of the game that have been covered. Talent trees, professions, a lot of different stuff. One of the most interesting pieces, though, and I think one of the ones that has been hotly contested, at least in the World of Warcraft community as a whole, is stuff about the Mythic Plus dungeons and how they are returning in Season 1.
Yeah, that's something that is, I think, very exciting news for a lot of Mythic Plus focused players. Although it has also drawn a little bit of controversy with the exact specifics of how this is being announced. So the TLDR is that there's going to be a mix of old and new dungeons in Mythic Plus. But the specific implementation here is that starting in Dragonflight M Plus Season 1, it's going to be 4 of the 8 Dragonflight dungeons in M+, and the other 4 will just be in normal heroic mythic only. And then the other 4 dungeons in the M+ pool are going to come from older expansions, not Shadowlands, but any previous expansions, it sounds like, are fair game for this. And then in Season 2, it will be a completely new set of the other 4 Dragonflight dungeons that weren't in Season 1, and then 4 different dungeons, again, from expansions before Shadowlands.
Yeah, and then Season 3, it's looking
Season
like
three, they haven't said anything about how they want to do it yet, which is, of course, often by Season 3s, we have new dungeons as well, but how many new dungeons will we have? Will we have new dungeons? And what will happen then? These are all unanswered questions.
Ian then did also, he made a blue post. There's been a ton of communication from not only just developers. There were the interviews, there was like the main broadcast, there were like side interviews, and then there have been a couple of blue posts made about different things. The dungeon ones was, again, one that has been talked about a lot. Ian made a blue post, basically was giving the reasoning behind why they were looking to do that. Where in some cases they want people to be going back to these old dungeons. In addition to that, they want to kind of spruce up the loot pool to where you don't feel like you're farming the same gear season in and season out. He also addressed, okay, if there's a item that's BIS, even from one season to the next, that's going to be tuned. That's not an issue of like the dungeons. That's not a reason that they shouldn't do this. But yeah, basically their hope is to make the dungeon gameplay itself feel fresher, like a new set of puzzles that the community solves each season.
I like the concept here a lot. I think this is a really cool thing to do, but I do think they should hold off on implementing this until after Season 1. My thinking is that Season 1 should just blast us with the new dungeons, and then they should come in with this on Season 2. And a lot of the arguments that you're going to hear Tettles making in favor of this he'll be saying these things that doing it this way gives you, that doing it my way wouldn't, that only holds true for the transition between Season 1 and 2, and then falls apart between 2 and 3 anyways. So that's my opening pre-rebuttal to your comments. Go ahead.
Dratnos and I disagree, which is why we're making this video, because like it's not exactly super clear which way is necessarily better, and I think that it's important that no way is like a clear favorite, and both of them have advantages and disadvantages of doing it this way. I think the 4 and 4 personally, it doesn't, to me, I think it's better. But in addition to that, like, I think this is one of those things that we can at least attempt one season. But the reason that I think it's better is because it allows for just better content pacing as a whole. I don't think it comes as any surprise. I had an issue with the content pacing in Shadowlands. I thought that, 1, dungeons were coming out too slow. 2, the Mythic Plus meta felt like it got very stale very quickly. And I think that, especially on expansion launch, like, there is a lot that you're learning, where it be like the seasonal affixes. You're gonna have 4 brand new dungeons that you've never done before. You're gonna have 4 dungeons that likely in some cases haven't even been Mythic Plus in some situations, where you're going to have to completely relearn them from the beginning as well. And if they're implemented in a season-long format, you have bigger incentives to learn them in a more competitive manner. And I think that this helps the content pacing as a whole, going from season 1 to season 2, where you're getting a new experience of dungeons. And then whenever you go from season 2 to season 3, which Dratnos already gave some random pre-rebuttal about, if it is just all 8 Dragonflight dungeons, there is like you said, there is an expectation of like there potentially could be new dungeons at that point. In addition to that, it's like I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to have all 8 Dragonflight dungeons at that moment, and then you're doing them all together. And I don't think it makes it worse at that moment.
I just think that the start of an expansion has been my like favorite time for M plus the last 2 times. This feeling of just like, oh, there's so much new content. That's my favorite thing about like the raid, the class design, all of that stuff about the game is just like you just get hit with all this new stuff. And to me, if I'm coming into a new dungeon and like I do exclamation point keys in my group, and it's just like 2 BFA dungeons, you know, a mop dungeon and a legion dungeon, I'm just like, you know, I feel like that is going to be a pretty unfortunate thing to happen. And I want to, like, I love the hit of new content. And I think that even just doing this thing that they're talking about starting in season 2 already creates so much more content freshness and churn than we had in Shadowlands, than we had in BFA, even than we had in Legion, where Legion added a lot of new dungeons over the course of the expansion. But even if you just went from season 1 to season 2 and you changed half the dungeons, that's, you know, 4 new dungeons in an M plus rotation is more than has ever happened from season to season before. So yeah, again, I think this is a really cool idea. I think it's better than even this version. I think is better than the Shadowlands version, but I think they don't have to start in season 1 to get all the benefit out of this.
What would be a proposed alternative then?
Yeah, so season 1, 8 Dragonflight dungeons, and then not even assuming they're launching any new dungeons, but obviously, hopefully they do. Season 2, you have you have 4 and 4. Season 3, you also can do 4 and 4, and if you have a new dungeon by then, you can have that be replacing either side of that. Certainly, as soon as there's a new dungeon, that should of course be an M plus as early as possible. I think sooner than they do in traditionally. They should try and get those new dungeons into M plus.
I think that this allows for better flexibility, though, in regards to the dungeons. Just like doing it the way that has initially been proposed, where you go 4-4-8 for like the Dragonflight. Like, okay, obviously we don't.
Well, so
the
8 is you're making up. They've not talked at all about what they want to do for season 3. So
okay, it's assumed that they're gonna. It's assumed that
it's not assumed by it. You're the only person who assumes.
Okay,
this.
Dude, why would you assume that they're just gonna go away? That doesn't make any sense.
Well, I would assume that they would keep doing a combination of new and old because that's what they're saying they're going to do this expansion. So I think it's more likely they will just have like a different set of 4 of Dragonflight and then 4 new old ones in season 3. Because by the time we get to season 3, that's when, like, I think old dungeons are in their most high demand, right?
I think the
Dragonflight ones have been out for longest, and people are the most like stale of them.
Oh, really? I think I have the alternative opinion of that.
Are you more excited to play Halls of Atonement now, or were you 2 years ago when it was fresh?
Well, so here's the thing: is like I'm still excited. I'm going to be excited for the Shadowlands dungeon, or the Shadowlands. I'm going to be excited for the Dragonflight dungeons on release, almost regardless. Yeah, regardless of whether I'm getting 4, regardless of whether I'm getting 8. And I feel like on expansion launch, you talk about that being the most exciting time of the expansion. I agree. It absolutely is.
Think about when like Legion M Plus came out though. If Legion M Plus had come out at the same time as like Shadowlands dungeons, right? It's like that. You don't need that there. Like the Shadowlands dungeons are new and cool.
Yeah, sure.
Like, we have new and cool Shadowlands dungeons. Let's just play those then. And then 6 months, a year down the line, it's like, all right, now we can start rotating these out, getting some new ones in, keeping the blood fresh.
I don't think this is like that though. I think this is about content pacing just as a whole. And I think that like, sure, we absolutely like there is enough content, like 8 dungeons like on release, that's plenty. If they're also going to be making like a lot more dungeons as a whole, if we were getting 8 on release and then we got like 2 new Dragonflight dungeons plus 2 old dungeons and then they removed some from the pool, I would totally be down with that. And I think that that's totally fine. It's just an issue of like, I really, really worry about the content pacing just generally. In addition to that, there are things like, I don't like refarming trinkets every single patch. I feel like the gear got really stale from this expansion's Mythic Plus.
Yeah,
but this isn't like a great.
Our solutions, our 2 solutions, both have the same problem with that, which is like by the time you get to either season 2 or season 3 or season 4, right? It's like you're going to have trinkets that you had in previous seasons, whether it was the direct season before or 2 ago, right? But like I think even just if a dungeon is only available for half the seasons of next expansion, that goes a long way towards the feeling of. Like, at least it's not every single season you're farming Ruby, right? It's like, okay, this season I get my Ruby. This season I get something else. This season I get my Ruby. This season I get something else. Like, that's, to me, that hugely fixes that already.
Obviously, this isn't something they said, but like they could even go like 4, 6, 8. Like they could do season 1. It's 4 Dragonflight dungeons. Season 2, it's 6 Dragonflight dungeons. And season 3, it's like 8 Dragonflight dungeons, all 8 Dragonflight dungeons. And like if they were going to remove 2 of them from the pool, going from season 1 to season 2, that could be like the 2 least popular dungeons. They could like be more flexible and adaptable and like rework them in some meaningful capacity.
To me,
and make
that's
them better.
The direction that makes more sense is like hit us with all the Dragonflight dungeons at the start, and then like take whichever one is the King's Rest.
Oh,
right?
take the 2 stinkers
never
out.
Do King's Rest again after season 1, right?
Okay.
And we can just leave that one on the sidelines. We can take the good ones forward, and then we can bring in some old dungeons and keep things fresh. But I don't know. I think there's a lot of room for experimentation here. I wouldn't hate it if they don't change this, but I do think it would be better. I think a lot of people have had a visceral reaction that is weird to not have all the new M plus in season 1, and I agree with that as well.
I do think that's fair criticism. I do at the end of the day think that like either direction they go with this, I think that neither is really bad. And if this 4 and 4 thing, they do end up committing to this and it ends up sucking, okay. They seem, one of the biggest takeaways from a lot of their comments that they had is talking about like the change in philosophy of like the direction of the game and like how they're like really approaching things. And if they did commit to this 4 and 4 thing, like they may, then I think overall it'll be fine at the end of the day. Like they'll do something.
They haven't
else
said
later.
anything about commitments at all as well.
Exactly.
Right? Like
yeah. Okay, so what are some of the dungeons that you would like to see brought back? So basically, I don't know. I think, oh gosh, I don't remember exactly where it was at. There's so many interviews, but at some point
they
it was
mentioned Shadowpan Monastery as a hypothetical in one of them at some point. Yeah,
right here. This is where the Shadowpan Monastery was mentioned. In addition to that, they said that no Shadowlands dungeons would be brought back for Mythic Plus, which
makes sense. Yeah,
those are the only 2 like prerequisites. So we have BFA and before. Which dungeons would you be super hyped to see brought back?
From BFA, I'd take Freehold and Underrot. Actually, I kind of miss Underrot. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. I think those would be my BFA picks.
I think that Freehold is by far my favorite.
Just such a. The thing about Freehold is like, if they're gonna bring back old dungeons as like a recurring thing for M plus, like I want to see Freehold a lot, but obviously I don't want to see Freehold every season. Although I wouldn't mind it. That dungeon is so good.
I think that the biggest difference between this and like the Legion time walking thing is that these are active for a full season.
Yes.
And it seems like they're going to implement the like current seasonal affix into it. We're not going to be, if we get a Legion dungeon, it's not just randomly going to have Infernal on it.
Unless they want to make it an affix for each expansion or something, which I think would be worse than just going with
that would be worse.
And making it work for each dungeon.
I agree with that.
In that season.
Hard to agree with that opinion.
Yeah.
But I think that for me, so you did BFA. From Legion, I'm just a big EOA fanboy, like big fan of open concept dungeons. Lower Caro is my second favorite dungeon, but they would like, we're getting that in 925 anyways.
That's in season 4.
Yeah, we're getting that in season 4. So I think that I'll have my appetite satiated for that kind of dungeon. Those are the 2. I love open concept dungeons.
We got Everbloom.
Everbloom Wilds
fits into that. Yeah.
Everbloom Wilds and Iron Docks would have been my pick from WoD. Obviously, we're getting Iron Docks back in 9.2.5, so I don't think that in 10.0 we would necessarily need that. I think that Everbloom Wilds, while there was a bunch of jank stuff, it at least in my mind seems like the most Mythic Plus ready dungeon. It's kind of weird because whenever you look back at the dungeons, a lot of them not close to design well for Mythic Plus. I wonder how they're going to change some of them to be like more Mythic Plus friendly.
Yeah. And then, of course, they referenced a MOP dungeon, so we may even be going back to MOP. Dungeons like Shadowpan Monastery definitely are options, too. I didn't play very much back then at all, so I don't even have like a pick from that expansion, really.
What is a landmine that would be like that you're looking to avoid?
I don't even know from MOP.
No, not just from MOP. Yeah. From Ever.
From Ever? Let's see. Violet Hold. The other Violet Hold.
Black Morass would be awful.
Black Morass M plus would not be good. Do not do that.
Is that the bog?
Yeah, that's the bog where it's just a portal opens 18 times and you fight the pack or a boss.
It would be awful. Yeah. That would be awful.
Oculus from Wrath of the Lich King. That's
the one with the dragon.
It's the dragon. Yeah, so Dragonflight themed.
Okay.
Also, if you think Black Morass has infinite dragons, and Violet Hold has contained dragons in it as well. So all of these are plausible dragon themed dungeons, but please do not give me them an M plus.
the ones that have anything. The ones that have like incredible jankness or like time gated pulls, or definitely there are a lot of dungeons that were not designed for Mythic Plus, and it's clear like I don't even know how they would begin to start tackling some of these. And so I think that there are some dungeons from a pool that they're going to be selecting from. They're like, yeah, this is a legacy dungeon that could definitely be reworked.
I doubt they'll really go back to Kata or before as well. I think Mop is probably the earliest they'll look at. Although Kata does have some dungeons that were done back then that I get, like, what was it? Was Shadowfang Keep was done back then? Could that be M plusable? That was when it was redone.
I watched a Dratnos YouTube video of that dungeon once.
Yeah, cool dungeon. Cool dungeon.
Anyways, so
what
yeah,
do you think?
I'm interested to hear the chat's opinion, the comments' opinion on like what they think about like the 4 and 4 stuff. If they think that, I think that the overwhelming support is going to be for the 8 dungeons on launch. Like
I actually don't think that's true. I think there are voices on both sides, which is good. And again, I'm glad with this, regardless of whatever they pick. This is a good direction. So yeah.
And then is there any sick dungeons that we missed as well that were like, okay, this would make a great Mythic Plus dungeon? They should definitely pick that.
Yeah, any Violet Hold fans that are mad at me now for saying that shouldn't be an M plus.
Violet Hold enjoyers need to get out. All right, we'll see you guys in the next one.